I'm Nathan Rodall. I'm here with my special guest, Dr. Thomas Dickey.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Dr. Thomas Dickey, and I'm currently the Director of Orchestral Studies at Oklahoma State University. In terms of my educational background, I went to Eastern Illinois University for my undergrad, where I studied both music ed and performance. I went down south to LSU for my master's in orchestral conducting, and then over to the University of Georgia for my doctorate in orchestral conducting. I consider myself one of those lucky musicians in that I always knew music was going to be my life. I just didn't always know in what capacity or in what direction. I started piano lessons when I was 4 years old. I wanted to start earlier than that, but my mother made me wait at least until the summer before kindergarten. I played in band, I played in youth orchestra, I did jazz, I sang in choir. I just immersed myself in as much music as possible. But I will say it was my experiences in youth orchestra and my first opportunities to conduct when I was in high school that really solidified the path of the podium is where I belong. Interacting with musicians, bringing compositions to life is where my heart, my passion really lies. And I've been very fortunate to spend the past 10 years primarily conducting college orchestras, but also youth orchestras. I guest conduct quite a bit, ranging from middle school honors orchestras all the way through now about 5 or 6 all-state orchestras I've had the opportunity to conduct. So music has, definitely been my life for as long as I can remember, but it just took me a little while to figure out in what direction was I going to go with it.
Well, and I think it's interesting that you started in performance and education.
Yeah.
Because somewhat recently being on both sides of the podium now is you see the conductors who only wanted to be conductors or only wanted to be professional musicians. When they get on the podium, there's this lack of empathy and understanding for somebody who can't play the note. And I'm sure you experience all the time, even at the college level, there's an oboe player who's struggling with a key or and something that is completely out of their control.
Yeah.
Or a brass player who just that day their lip is just chopped and there's no way they're going to hit that note. And it doesn't help anybody, particularly that performer, to point it out again and again and again, and it destroys the morale of the group. But someone who's an educator understands that if this is going to keep being a problem, maybe we'll have a private conversation, but we're all here to get a little bit better. When we leave rehearsal, will it have been better? I mean, maybe the day before the rehearsal, you're going to have a different feeling about the horn player chipping the note.
Yeah.
But someone who's an educator can handle that situation with so much more empathy and compassion. And I really urge anybody out there who is trying to be a conductor to not just take the straight to the podium path, that becoming an educator first. And Leonard Bernstein famously saw himself more so as an educator than a conductor, that's ultimately what he was doing, for all of music history and for the musical society, was educating people about great music.
Absolutely. Someone said to me, Thomas, you have the patience of a Tibetan monk. And I look back on it, I take it as a compliment because I think I have this personality about me of when I'm in rehearsal and if something doesn't go well, and I can clearly tell that is just, it's not going to happen again. We're just having a bad day or whatnot. I don't make a mountain out of the molehill. We go on, we focus on bigger picture things. But I want to say one of the best pieces of advice I ever got when I decided to become a conductor was first become a master of your musician and then teach. Because when you teach is when you really start to become, in my opinion, a much better conductor, because I was suddenly responsible for all the musicians in front of me. I had to help get them to that next level. And so that really affected me in terms of my development as a conductor.
Well, some of the interviews from those first few times that Berlin Phil had Dudamel come out and conduct, and he was so struck with it, they had nothing left to learn from him.
Yeah.
It was the other way around.
Yeah.
And that he needed to, disrobe of this maestro mentality that he was used to and that he was taught. People are taught to be that way. It's not that people get on the podium and just decide to be a jerk that day. It's that there was a school of thought for a long time that I hold the big stick and I do the talking and I make the decisions.
Yeah.
But in that situation in particular, those individuals have worked decades to get to the level of proficiency that they're at. And if you as a conductor are unwilling to hear at least the sentiment that they bring to a particular passage or disagreement, you're never going to get them to play with you. Maybe for you, but never with you.
And you probably won't get invited back again.
So, yeah, precisely.
One and done, as it were.
My mentor in undergrad, Jeffrey Bill Hansen, if you know him very well.
Of course, yes.
I was coming right out of Tacoma Youth Symphony, which was a very cutthroat group when I was in it.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't pass your performance examination 2 weeks before the test, you may or may not have played on the concert.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anybody ever got kicked out in that regard. I think it was more of a, we're just going to put some fire under you and make sure you're ready. But I know it did cause a lot of stress for people. And then I get into Orchestra Pacific Lutheran University, and we're dealing with Dr. Bill Hansen, who is one of, if not just the most intelligent and thoughtful preparers of a score, but also a really competent conductor. But he would never say, you right there, you are playing the wrong note and you are the problem. Yeah. He would never do that. And as I came to know him better, it's about the civics of the orchestra, that the whole orchestra is one organism and the guy on the podium is just one small piece.
Yeah.
And you need the most important thing that person has waving the stick is cultivating an environment where everyone makes music together.
I agree 100%. I always tell my conducting students here, there is no I in orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
And our job is to take these 50, 60, 100 people in front of us and bring it together to form one interpretation, as opposed to like 100 different simultaneous sounding interpretations. And your experience with Tacoma reminds me a lot of St. Louis Youth Orchestra. That's where Bruce Walker and I first met, 100 years ago.
Oh, okay. I was at some point we had to bring up that Bruce Walker is how I know just about everybody in this world.
I think everybody in this world knows Bruce Walker in some capacity. He's just the nicest guy.
One of my favorite people.
Absolutely. But we played in St. Louis Youth Orchestra under a conductor who shall remain nameless. But I remember very similar feelings of, we played very well as an orchestra, but it was out of fear. You were scared to death to miss a note. And I vowed right then and there, I was probably like 16, I said, I will never become this kind of conductor, because I hated the way it made me feel. I mean, I was just tense for like 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, yes, we played Firebird, Beethoven 7, Shosty 1, but we were scared to death the whole time. So, yeah. But fortunately, that was about 20-something years ago, and those days are long behind me.
Well, and here's the great debate in academia as we have this transition away from the people who are like that and the people who produced those like us who have vowed not to be like that.
Yeah.
How do we continue to draw in large numbers of ambitious students who want to put the work in and produce fabulous concerts without cracking the whip every time something goes wrong? How do we keep that engagement, but without the fear?
It's been my experience that when the players recognize that you respect them, you respect their time, their musicianship, and that you're wanting to really get the best out of them in the most respectful, nurturing way possible, that the players will be willing to give you 100%, or maybe even a little bit more than that, as opposed to, well, it's a class, or my scholarship requires it, so I have to play the notes, or I have to be in this class. In my experience, when there is this mutual respect of, player and conductor, respect of each other's times and abilities, and when there is that very collegial environment, that is created, for me, that's when the real music making takes place. When everybody then wants to be there, they want to contribute to their most. And what I find so rewarding about working with college orchestras is, I feel as though I spend most of my time showing young people what they actually are capable of. Like, there was an extra 5% they didn't know they had it in them. And while I might have the patience of a Tibetan monk, when you put a baton in my hand, I'm on the podium, I feel like a little terrier dog. I'm just so excited and energetic in my conducting.
Oh.
And I find that my students, when they see how excited I am about orchestra or the piece they're playing, it just really ignites that same love and passion in them as well.
Well, in the absence of rehearsals and our ensembles and really just about 100% of what we do as professionals, what is coming into place for you as your current passion project? What's keeping you engaged and a part of the music community?
Well, I'm very fortunate that this entire past semester at OSU, 2 out of the 3 concerts we gave were devoted to compositions written by women and composers of color. And then our 3rd cycle was an all Beethoven cycle. And then unfortunately, our 4th cycle got canceled because of the pandemic. And so I've had all of these, composers and compositions on my mind. And I'm actually starting to write my first scholarly article, fingers crossed, for publication. That's taking a look at some of these I would say well-known composers of color like Samuel Coleridge Taylor, but finding some of the lesser-known pieces, doing an analysis of them, and then trying to uplift those works and celebrate them, put them on the radar of other conductors, so that hopefully they will become as excited about these pieces as I have been recently.
That's great. As on a more of a conductory kind of note, one of the first things that any conductor does, I mean, there's a couple of, rogue scientists out there who say you should never do this, but score study as a point of fact. Just for fun, I've got my Beethoven 7 in front of me. And it's, the new Breitkopf-Hartel edition, and I haven't written anything in it. What are some of the first scribbles I need to make? Now, obviously, I've heard the whole thing before. But maybe there's a graduate student out there who has just been told, hey, grab Beethoven 7. When we get back from this thing, you'll be working on it. They don't have an ensemble. They have access to a million recordings, and they've got their score. What's the first thing they need to do?
What a loaded question there, Nathan. I mean, I have an actual 10-step process that I myself go through, and I
love it.
I gave our webinar on it yesterday, but I don't want to bore you and your listeners with that. But I would say the first thing they should do is treat this Beethoven 7 score like a present on Christmas morning, and you're opening it for the first time, and you're just allowing yourself to walk through the score, see all these neat little pieces of this puzzle you're going to put together, or this very complicated little toy you've got, and then allow yourself to see how it starts to come together.
So keep the pencil in the drawer for a while.
Oh, totally.
Don't just start scribbling away.
Exactly.
You haven't even met the piece yet.
Exactly. Keep walking through it. Almost like it's a book. You're just going through it, looking for trends, looking for observations, moments that catch your eye. You may not know why they catch your eye, but oh, okay, noted. And then I would say after you've done that, then go out, get the pencil, get the ruler. I love to use rulers when I mark scores. And at first, I just make little tick marks at the top of the system of, I think that's an important event, or ooh, that's a first fortissimo, or that's the first subito pianissimo, or whatnot. And again, I keep going through looking for moments, and then I'll get out my ruler and start to draw lines of okay, I think there's something going on in maybe these 32 bars. Let's take a look at these 32 bars. Let's break them down, and so forth, and then figure out what's going on in each little chunk of music. Melodically, harmonically, rhythmically, who's going to need a cue, what's going to need to be brought out, and so forth. And then after I do that, I take a couple steps back and I realize, wow, what was first this glowing present on Christmas morning, I now actually see how the first 4 bars connect to the next 4, to the next 8. Next thing you know, I've got the whole movement. Of course, that takes quite a long time to do so, but
absolutely.
But that would be my best advice to a young conductor who's going to be studying Beethoven 7 for the first time is think of it like a present, and you're going to try to figure out how do you assemble this toy. Go from there.
Now, would you go so far to maybe grab some drafting paper and make kind of an XY graph of energy over time or textures over time before you start, scribbling and, not destroying your score, but sort of tarnishing the Christmas Day present, so that you can really see the vehicles of motion within the symphony and how they connect together.
Mhm.
Because a lot of those transitions happen on a page turn. How are you going to indicate to yourself just in the score, hey, this
Uh-huh.
is coming next? So do you
Yeah.
do anything outside of the score to graph the way that things work?
I used to in graduate school. That was a common project we had to do. We always called them the elephant toe graphs because you had like the little ones and then the bigger ones and the bigger
Oh,
ones,
okay.
and it looked like a bunch of elephant feet. Nowadays, I tend to put all my analytical markings right there on the page. Whether it's 8-measure phrase, 4-measure subphrase. This is theme 1, part 1, modulating to 5 or whatnot. I tend to put those markings right there on the page. But every now and then, like for example, the Samuel Coleridge-Taylor piece that I'm analyzing for my
Mm-hmm.
article, I've done a little bit something, but it's more like prosaic, where I'm mapping it out to remind myself what's going on in particular measure numbers, key signatures, thematic areas, and so forth.
Well, and with Coleridge Taylor, in my experience, and maybe I'm totally wrong, it can be really hard to determine whether or not the harmony is moving with the theme, or if the theme is somehow moving unrelated to a harmonic change. And so it's not quite as, it's still brilliant, but it's not this clean, like, Haydn or Mozart change, where it's just new chord, new idea, new key.
Right.
He kind of weasels you into this new idea by closing out the last one with a different color.
Oh, totally. I mean, for example, the piece that I'm studying, it starts out in D major,
Mm-hmm.
and then he makes his way very subtly, very quickly actually, to E flat major, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't slap you in the face like the Neapolitan chord often does. And the next thing you know, he goes to G major, and then there's this A pedal to take you back to the tonic when you take the repeat of the exposition. And I thought, I have never heard of another composer going 1 to Neapolitan to 4, dominant pedal back to 1. But then I thought, he was writing late 1890s, early 1900s. Why would he have to follow
Well,
the same expectation?
at least in my analysis, he seems to be this hybrid of Elgar and Mahler, and not that he sounds anything like Sibelius at all, but in the way that Sibelius has a very functional harmony, but none of us understand it.
Yes, definitely.
And I think we're so married to this idea in Western music of this chord has to follow that chord, whereas someone like Sibelius showed us that, well, I'm sitting down at the piano, and in Sibelius's cases, he's had a few first,
Yeah.
that maybe this next chord just sounds really cool, or I can keep doing this thing up here and change the texture that's happening underneath it, and get something fresh and new, which is not something that Elgar or Mahler, people that Coleridge Taylor was if not imitating, trying to tip the hat to, they weren't doing that quite in the same way.
Absolutely, I agree. In the particular piece that I'm analyzing, I love the technique of the pedal down below, like basses and timpani, bassoons, and then up above, the violins repeat the same motive, and they climb a half step, and then a half step, and a half step. So using like a monophonic modulation technique that goes back to Bach, and there he's doing it in the 1890s to get us from 1 to 4 or to the Neapolitan. But it's it happens so organically, or like we just sense the momentum, it's driving, it's going somewhere, and then bam, you get there and you realize that was a very odd journey, but hey, it worked. It was it felt very natural, sounded very organic. I hear in his music a lot more, you think about Brahms and the Hungarian dances, Grieg and the Norwegian dances, a little bit of Tchaikovsky. I hear a lot more of those three gentlemen, perhaps, than I do the Elgar and the Mahler. But that's just me. I know he had the nickname of being like, the African Mahler or something like that. And I think, maybe, but I hear much more.
Yeah, it depends on which piece you're listening to, I found.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally.
I mean, his Ballade is straight up Mahler.
Absolutely.
But many of his other works, I think I would categorize more in the Schumann, Brahms category, in terms of the really lush harmonies that aren't married to any one key.
Yeah. And I think it's an exciting time that a lot of scholars, conductors, and so forth are really starting to dig into his music, and we're getting analyses, and we're actually getting multiple perspectives on some of his
Mm,
compositions. The article that I'm working on right now, I've got at least 3 different viewpoints on the same one piece, and
yeah.
I'm trying to throw all that together. And for me, that is so exciting that he's finally getting his due attention, as it were.
Well, and as we were talking about earlier, for someone in academia, I'm sure if somebody came to you with another analysis of the Eroica Symphony, you would hear them out and you'd be quite polite and give them some helpful thoughts. But it's got to be boring you to tears. If somebody shows you a score and they say, "Hey, the New York Public Library had this, and it's 300 works by the same person, and it's all handwritten, and nobody's heard it."
Hmm.
I mean, that would probably light up your brain like a Christmas tree.
Absolutely.
And so I think those graduate students out there, some of whom might be listening to this, stop looking for new earth where there's already been digging.
Totally.
There's so much that hasn't been uncovered if you're willing to go outside of the things that we are familiar with.
I remember being in grad school, and a couple of my PhD and theory students or whatnot were trying to find evidence of 12-tone row, like a proto 12-tone row approach in Beethoven, or thinking like Mozart and minimalism as like the precursor to it. I'm like, bless your hearts, friends. I'm
Well,
so
and it's not
excited
that that's a waste of time. It's
no, but
absolutely not a waste of time. But
no,
it's
but
not quite the new ground that could be broken somewhere else.
exactly.
Well, as we try and bring this back towards the students that I make this for, because this is primarily for my students while we're out of school, to keep them involved in the musical community and thinking about how they might continue music in college. Let's present a hypothetical. I am looking to be a pre-med student. I play the cello. I was in my chamber orchestra in
Mhm.
school. Maybe I went to state for my performance of the Rococo Variations or something like that.
Mhm.
Uh, but I don't necessarily see myself as a music major. 2 questions. To what degree can music still bankroll my higher education?
Mhm.
And how involved can I be in the college level music and still pursue my pre-med degree?
Excellent question. I think one, it depends on what school you're looking to attend, because there are many universities that, unless you commit to being, cello performance, maybe cello music ed, they're not going to let you in the orchestra or the top orchestra if they happen to have more than
Mm-hmm.
one. And then you get other schools like OSU, for example, where we get a lot of really strong pre-med engineering students, and we're happy to have them in the orchestra, give them scholarship monies, out-of-state tuition waivers, and so forth. So I think it really depends on the type of university you're looking at. But in terms of the degree program or how you can keep music in your life, I always encourage the students to, keep an open mind, to let music be as much of their life as they want it to be. Because you never know, you might end up wanting to do the double major, maybe the BA in music, and also follow the pre-med route, something like that. Um, I think it's exciting when people are finding new ways to keep music either in their life on a vocational level, or find ways to keep music a part of their life when they leave college, and make it a career out of it. So I I think it's almost like case by case, but it's an exciting time at so many universities where we're finding ways for the pre-med students or the engineering students or pre-law, to keep the violin or the cello a part of their life, and then find a way to also keep it a part of their careers.
Well, and I think many universities are starting to have to consider the way that they offer music scholarships, or the caveat that comes with that music scholarship, because there are so many um, profoundly talented musicians that
Yeah.
aspire to something in a different field, but know that music is where their family is. I'm sure you're experiencing right now, during this time where we're all disconnected, it's the people in the music community holding us together, and the people who are offering support and helping us out, or the people that we're reaching out to reconnect with. It's the music family. It's not, Bob down at the copy machine. Because how much
Yeah.
thought do you really give Bobby at the coffee machine? I'm sure he's a great guy,
Yeah.
but the people that you sat with in all state orchestra in whichever state you're in, or maybe all
Yeah.
Northwest or a
Yeah.
regional thing,
Or youth
those
orchestra.
are the relationships that last. Absolutely.
Oh, I
Uh,
agree. They last for life. I mean, the fact that here, Bruce and I, 20 something years later, we still keep in touch. Our paths cross every couple of years. Same thing with other, members from all state orchestra. I remember back in Illinois, really very clearly. I always think it's important, that we do keep the engineers, the pre-medicine folk, because you think about when they graduate college and we're looking for donors or people who will financially support these institutions,
mhm,
it's not going to be the violin major or the cello major or the orchestra teachers. We are not that
mhm,
financially
mhm.
able to contribute, but it will be those people who were brilliant violinists who went on to become lawyers or engineers and whatnot, and they remember, like you said, what a meaningful role orchestra played or music played in their life, and they want to somehow give back to that profession, when they are finally able to do so monetarily.
Well, and as I'm approaching 30, I'm just 28 now, and I'm seeing a lot of my really close friends from orchestra in high school that are finishing up, doctoral residencies, or just getting their foot in the door with, larger businesses or accounting firms or things like that. And you scroll through the Facebook feed and you see, who's experiencing hardship in life, even before the pandemic.
Yeah,
uh, the people who kept playing music always had a purpose in life,
yeah,
because to some degree, no matter how much you enjoy being a phlebotomist or something like that, it doesn't leave a lot of room for a hobby.
yeah.
I mean, it could, but nobody goes home and thinks about phlebotomy. But if you do your job, you do it well, you take pride in your work, and it helps you raise your family and feel comfortable in your financial security,
Mhm.
you have to have that artistic outlet somewhere in your life. For some people that's woodworking. For some people that's uh, I know a lot of people are into board-based games, or maybe they've got a Reddit page on film reviews. uh, but for people who were in school music, why not let that hobby be the local community orchestra?
Mhm.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, at least in Seattle, which is just a few miles from where I am across the sound, you'd be hard pressed to throw a rock and not hit an amateur orchestra.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with Dr. Ryan Dudenbostel, who's at Western Washington University, and thinking about the purpose of the symphony orchestra. As much as it's for the audience, it's also for the performers. That being able to make music together is, uh, I'm not that kind of doctor, but is a profoundly more powerful treatment for things like anxiety and depression than anything a doctor can prescribe you. I mean, I'm not a doctor. Don't take my medical advice on that one. But the element of being part of a community and having a purpose in life is so important. And if you can find room for that, whatever career you're in, I know conductors like you and me are going to be profoundly happy to have those people. And I think those people would find uh, a significant benefit in their well-being just for being in that orchestra.
Oh, absolutely. And it's one of those things where, we always think of music as it's a language, it's a universal language that doesn't use
Mm-hmm.
words. And I would argue that for me, yes, it is language, but it's medicine, it's therapy, it's community, it's so many other things. And whether it be you're the one conducting the orchestra, playing in the orchestra, or listening to somebody else, you start to almost like sympathetically vibrate, or like you experience,
Mm-hmm.
emotions that
Mm-hmm.
you had no idea you had in you, or it's somehow like it's this cathartic, moment for you. So
Mm-hmm.
it's of course language, it is, but it's medicine, it's art, it's
Yeah.
therapy, it's community, it's everything.
And it's not always the piece you think it's going to be.
Absolutely, totally.
Sometimes playing the first violin part and Haydn 88, and I'm just playing the 16th notes and
Uh-huh.
thinking about what groceries I need to get later.
Uh-huh.
And maybe it looks really hard from the audience, but it's kind of cathartic.
Yeah.
Uh, but then playing uh, a piece by a new composer, and maybe I wasn't very excited about it, and maybe the rehearsal process was very difficult and frustrating.
Mhm.
But in performance, you hear this one chord, and it's like you've never heard music before in your life.
Exactly. It's
So
constantly new. Yeah,
yeah,
constantly new.
and allowing yourself to have those moments.
For me, those are the moments that make it, worth getting out of the bed in the morning. It's a reason to live, because
Absolutely.
how many other people are constantly discovering something new about their job or their profession, their vocation. I think music, the arts, like that's special to us. Not everybody gets to have that.
Well, as we start to wrap things up here, I've got a couple of fun questions and a couple of, well, still fun questions.
Sure, sure.
So my first question is here: if you had the forces to achieve any repertoire you wanted, what would your dream concert be? I mean, don't worry about horn players getting chopped. You can do whatever you want.
Uh-huh. Wow. I've talked with my orchestra and my conducting students about what I call like my own personal conductor bucket list.
Mhm.
And I've actually been very fortunate, especially in the past 4 years here at OSU. I've gotten through most of my top 10 bucket list pieces. Just the handful of ones I've got left, probably Mahler 2 and Beethoven 9.
Mhm.
A lot of the big symphonies. I'm very fortunate to be able to say my bucket list. I don't have many other pieces left. Now, would I think that's a good concert to do like Beethoven 9 in the first half, Mahler 2 in the second half? I don't know. But I would say that those two pieces I hope to conduct one day, hopefully not too far away, especially if I could wave a wand and make it happen.
Mhm.
Because there's just something, especially those two pieces and the text that the singers are singing about. Boy, when you talk about like what we're going through now with the pandemic, and bringing people together
Well, and
again.
you definitely have the vocal forces to achieve any of that repertoire. You're very blessed in that capacity.
I would like to think so, yes. And so for me, there's something about those two pieces. Like if we were to do those, coming off the
Mhm.
pandemic, I just think there would not be a dry eye in the house, both on stage and out in the audience.
Mm. And my next question, and maybe this is still fun for me, but maybe less fun generally, is how might a student who is thinking about music but also thinking about other programs, how might they look at your institution and start to make some connections?
We post a lot of our information for prospective students via social media because, while you and I, when we were looking at colleges, we were going to the website or maybe even like directories. But
Making
nowadays,
phone calls.
exactly, writing letters and mailing them with stamps and so forth. But nowadays, we try to put all of our energy, or most of it, I should say, onto like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, our YouTube channels, and so forth. At least on the orchestra side. That way, the students can see what are our upcoming concerts. They can take a look at photos from recent rehearsals. We will very often live stream our concerts. That way, if the students can't join us,
Yeah.
in-house, they can at least watch it online.
And are those archived if my kids just want to check out what you guys do?
It will depend on the concert. For example, this past semester when we had some of those, the composers of color or the women composers, those were like on rental and tight copyright laws. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
ended up not video streaming them or live streaming them. But in general, yes, I probably, if there were specific pieces or concerts you guys had in mind, I'm sure I could go digging through the archives and send them your way. But that would be my best recommendation is just get on social media, and take a look at what we're doing, what we're playing, because we also, in my opinion, do a very good job of celebrating our current students and our recent alumni. We're always bragging about what awards our current students are winning, what great jobs did our recent alumni win. I mean, not too long ago, we had a former horn major. I think he landed the third or fourth horn with Philadelphia. So of course,
Wow.
we were, celebrating that, or, when our ed graduates, get these great, high school band, orchestra, choir jobs, or their programs are going on to play at All-State. For me, that also, tells you a lot about the type of environment that we have here. We're very student focused. and we love to celebrate and brag on our kiddos. So I would tell them to come check us out on social media and see the great things we've got going on down here.
That's great.
Yeah.
And my very last question, I like to ask everybody this question,
Okay.
is if you had an opportunity at a rehearsal with 10 or 11-year-old Thomas Dickey,
Mm-hmm.
and you could see he was at a moment thinking about, am I going to keep doing music or not? What could you tell your younger self that would have removed all doubt that music absolutely can be a career?
Oof. Well, at the risk of having what I would call an ugly cry moment here on a podcast, it's only been something that I've had an ugly cry about in just recent years. It's almost cliche, Nathan. You think about, maybe it's that middle school orchestra teacher or is your youth orchestra director who just played such a profound role on you, or just like affected your life back then in a way that you couldn't put words to, but you knew, like, my goodness, this person is so special or just means so much to me. And I remember that 10 or 11-year-old Thomas Dickey already had that relationship, or there was that person in my life, and I made it my goal, like, one day I want to be that for somebody else. And then I start teaching and I'm conducting and I'm thinking, am I having this affect on people the way it was done done to me? And then it was 4 years ago when I left a job that I had had for 5 years. And the college students and the youth orchestra students, just the outpouring. I mean, we all had a really big, ugly cry.
You're about to make me ugly cry.
After that final concert, and they prepared for me this, essentially like not dossier, like a scrapbook. And it had all these famous, what they call like Dr. Dickey-isms or Dr. Dickey quotes or pictures from things. And they were things I say, but I never realized I said them so often that the kiddos like kept a tab of them, or like every now and then I'll just get the most heartwarming little, message on Facebook, or like somebody like, once your student, I'm always your student. And, it just stops you dead in your tracks and you realize, oh my God, I'm affecting people in the way that I was once affected when I was their age,
Mm.
So I'm so glad, that I was even at the age of 10, I was already picking up on that the arts or teachers, they have that like wizardry power, and we should try to pay it forward, so to speak, at least once in our lives. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say I became really aware of that about 5 years ago. So yeah, I would tell little 10 or 11-year-old Thomas, trust your gut. What you're feeling is correct, and one day you're going to pay it forward. Trust your gut.
What a beautiful way to wrap up this conversation. I'm
Right
going to go ahead and hit record here, but we can keep talking for a second. But thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nathan. This has been such a treat. Thank you.